My name is Luz Chapa, and I'm a clinical consultant with the RMTAC team. And it is a real privilege to welcome you to this webinar today. We are the Resource and Empowerment Technical Assistance Center for Behavioral Health, which is known as RMTAC, which is made possible by funding through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is known as SAMHSA. And today's presentation is Expanding Culture Horizons, a provider's guide to supporting bicultural youth and third culture kids. We will explore the unique experiences, the strengths, and the challenges faced by youth navigating multiple cultural identities. We will also discuss practical, culturally grounded strategies providers can use to foster belonging, emotional well-being, identity development, and resilience among bicultural and third cultural youth. And we are also very excited to inform that today's session is eligible for NBCC CE credit. But in order to receive credit, we must attend the live webinar for the full duration of the session. So we ask that you please remain present and engaged, that you keep your camera on and participate in discussions, complete any required knowledge checks, and submit the post-event survey, which is very important to us. Please be aware that partial credit cannot be awarded for attending only part of the session, and we will be monitoring attendance and engagement to ensure that NBCCC requirements are being met. So if you are unable to keep your camera on, but would like to receive CE credit, please send us a private message so that we can go ahead and assist you with this. And again, we are honored to share this presentation and create a space for reflection, learning, and meaningful conversations together. So by the end of today's presentation, we also hope that you will have learned to identify the unique needs of bicultural and third culture youth as they learn who they are and how to cope with stressors all during the resettlement process. The practical applications that you as a provider can implement from a strengths-based perspective, and how to adapt those strengths to navigate the experiences that these youth face. We also aim to inform you about the services that RMTAC offers to support you with the work that you do. And during our time together today, please share any questions you have in the chat so that we can address them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. I am pleased to introduce today's speaker, which is Esther Rodriguez, who is also a clinical consultant with the RMTAC team and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in supporting diverse communities. Esther will be guiding us through the discussion and sharing valuable insights. And with that being said, I will turn it over to Esther.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that warm welcome and introduction, Luz. I'm really happy to be here. I'm looking forward to engaging with you all on this topic that is of personal significance to me because I'm actually a grown-up bicultural youth myself, and I've navigated a lot of the issues that we're going to be discussing today. I'm still actively working to synthesize my values based on my cultural traditions and my American ideals. So I'm glad you're here and I'm excited to get started. Just a quick note that we are going to be using the chat feature multiple times during the presentation through reflection, questions, and discussion. So keep that chat feature open throughout our time together. So by the end of today's presentation, I'm hoping to provide you all with a better understanding of how to identify the unique stressors of bicultural youth and third culture kids and how to apply strengths-based strategies to support their identity formation and resilience. We can see the learning objectives here. Let's get started. I wanted to start us off first by defining the terms that I'm going to be discussing today so that we all have some of the same foundational groundwork. So third culture kids, or TCKs, they are individuals who spend a significant part of their developmental years living in cultures outside of their parents' passport country. They're highly mobile and they experience significant geographic displacement. Their first culture is the parents' heritage. Their second culture is the host country where they currently live. But their third culture is the shared lifestyle of others who live in between worlds. And a lot of times when you search this term online, you're going to find that examples include like military families, missionary kids, or corporate expats. But this also includes refugees who oftentimes make extended stops on their way to the US. So for example, I worked with a client who was from Honduras and her husband was from El Salvador. And they wanted to move to the US because they wanted to give their unborn child the opportunity for a safer life, just free of violence and poverty, and they had numerous issues on their journey. So they ended up stopping first in Guatemala and they had their first child there. And then once they were able to restart their journey, they made it all the way to Mexico before they had to stay there for a while, lay low, and they ended up having a second child there. And then they finally cleared their journey to the US, where they had their third and their final child, the only one who was a US citizen. So each member of that family in this example was from a different country of origin, but they were going to have significantly distinct cultural values and tradition than those of their passport countries because the family was just an amalgamation of a bunch of different cultures. So in these cases, like with these kids, oftentimes they're going to relate more to each other than they are to the people from their home country or their host country. Now, bicultural youth are individuals who have been exposed to or have internalized two distinct cultures. Usually it's the heritage culture of the parents at home and the dominant culture of the society where they live, go to school, or work. And they coexist within one geographic location and oftentimes feel like they're balancing two worlds. They're frequently cultural bridges for their families. They navigate the tension between who I am at home versus who I am in public. I've worked with many bicultural youth during my time as a clinician, and I would see children who were either born in the US to parents who were born outside of the US, or they were born in another country but immigrated to the US at such a young age that they had little recollection of their time in the home country. And these children would feel the pressure of translating for their parents, caring for younger siblings, switching between collectivistic values at home, like shared decision making based on what's best for the family, and individualistic culture at school, like advocating for personal needs, and then deciphering their own identity amid two worlds. The core difference between these two terms is that bicultural youth are usually rooted in one place, but they're balancing two sets of cultural values simultaneously. Whereas third culture kids are often uprooted multiple times, meaning their identity is built on the experience of transition rather than the values of a specific location. Okay, so now that we have the same foundational groundwork, I want to take a closer look at the unique developmental milestones and stressors experienced by these youths who grow up and mature with multiple cultural influences. So as providers, we understand how discrepancies in belonging can lead to low self-concept clarity, insecurity, low self-esteem, because these children have the unique experiences of forming their social identity whilst mobile and straddling various cultures. These youths experience a sense of cultural homelessness, meaning that they don't align with one specific culture, which studies have found can result in lower self-esteem and higher rates of anxiety, depression, and stress. And adolescents are already developing a sense of self and personal identity, as we've all come to understand from Erikson's psychosocial stages of development. But this is then compounded by delayed identity formation and rootlessness due to stressors like the belonging paradox and bicultural stress, which you can see defined on this slide. So as a result of all of that, these children can form maladaptive coping strategies that prevent them from forming meaningful relationships with their peers or end up causing them to burn out from switching between their home and school identities in an attempt to manage these issues on their own. So because of these unique experiences that these children go through, they oftentimes require more specialized support than their monocultural peers to develop their ethnic identity and a sense of cultural belonging for a better chance at improved outcomes into adulthood. And this is where you, as the provider, can come in. So moving right along, I want to continue with the topic and expand it to look at how we can apply practical strategies through a strengths-based approach that fosters resilience and adaptability in youth developing their own identities while resettling. So consistently normalizing identity fluidity as a part of growing up can help these children realize that they're not a fragmented person, but they're just a child figuring out who they are. like a lot of you mentioned in the chat, engaging them in that conversation, coming to it with curiosity and compassion and understanding, being culturally aware when engaging in the discussions. So to add to that, a simple exercise to practice with them is to provide them with or create a list together of identifying factors, anything from gender identity, race, ethnicity, religious or spiritual practices, sexual orientation, age group, disability, nationality, all of that, and asking them to select the ones that they identify with, right? So in that moment, how do they identify? Then taking a look at that same list, ask them which ones they identify with when they're at school. And then again, when they're at home. The ones that they select across all settings can help form the foundation of their identity. And the ones that change can offer an opportunity for a discussion on code switching and cultural blending while addressing the issues of the belonging paradox and the chameleon exhaustion, as we saw in the previous slides. There are also a lot of practical tools that can be gleaned from existing practices and can be incorporated into your work. On this slide, I have the example of narrative mapping, which is drawn from narrative exposure therapy. And this exercise has the child review their life chronologically and identify the positive and the traumatic experiences that make up their life. One of the outcomes is that it can help them view their life more broadly, recognizing the experiences that make them who they are beyond culture. And if you're interested in learning more about this practice, because there's a lot more detail to it, we did just launch an online learning module on narrative exposure therapy and the modality. You can enroll in that through our website. It's a free educational tool. It's self-paced and it offers a certificate of completion. I really do encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested in learning more, because it goes into significant detail about what this exercise looks like. In addition to that, I do want to mention that utilizing digital tools can also be incredibly proactive. So I would recommend researching content creators who celebrate the child's culture and provide age-appropriate educational material on biculturalism. We live in a digital age, and these children are going to be exposed to new technologies in the US. So introducing them to healthy materials early on can help guide that algorithm, and you can work with the family and the caregivers to set screen time rules early on and get ahead of the issues that arise from the sudden exposure to chronic technology use. We've looked at the unique challenges that impact the development and integration of bicultural youth and third culture kids. I want to shift to examine some of the integration strategies and competencies that might mitigate the effects of these challenges. So these kids, like I mentioned, they're cultural chameleons. They've learned to avoid sharing about their backgrounds to protect themselves from the frustration that comes from being misunderstood and taking on that role of the mediator in their homes. They believe that they can take care of their families in a way that only they know how, because they've taught themselves how to bridge that gap between their caregivers' culture and the host countries. But these aren't normally viewed positively. So how many of you have had an experience or a situation in which a child is attempting to translate some kind of elevated concept to their parent, right? The typical one is medical terms, but they don't know the vocabulary. So they turn to the parent, and the parent then ends up expressing some frustration, and they're saying like, well, aren't you learning English in school? What are you learning in school? Are you forgetting your native language that you don't know how to explain this to me? I don't know if this has happened to you, but give me a thumbs up in the chat if you've heard this before or you've heard something similar, where the child's attempting to support or translate or be a bridge for the family, and then the family ends up just experiencing frustration because there's just a disconnect. And again, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. I think this is a very normal experience. And so what we see is this lack of understanding from the parent, and these ridiculously high expectations that are placed on the child by a medical system that might be too under-resourced to offer the appropriate translation services, and it overshadows this incredibly difficult task that the child is performing, which would normally be a task that requires years of training, accrediting, licensing to perform. But the message, either way, that they take away is that they're not good enough to compete with the demanding expectations from their home and their host culture. What we can clearly see is that these kids are outperforming their peers in their capacity to read nonverbal cues before engaging with people from either cultural background. They're scanning new environments to determine their place in the social hierarchy, and they're creating and maintaining these clear mental boundaries that separate their home and their school personas, but the child is only seeing where they fall short of the expectations that are placed on them by seemingly competing sides. And the practical application here is that we should start with rudimentary, foundational psychoeducation that explains these aspects of the child's functioning from a strengths-based perspective instead of a deficit-based one. And what I'm hoping to help you realize is that changing your perspective allows you to more readily recognize the character strengths and resilience in these youths so that you can then help them shift their focus from harsh judgment towards themselves to a lot more gentle compassion and care for their overwhelmed and dysregulated systems. So continuing with the examining integration strategies and competencies that can mitigate the effects of the identity formation challenges in these kids, I want you to notice the graphic on the right side of this slide. It's a diagram that shows the third space, and it's on the fringes of the home and the host culture in which bicultural youth and third culture kids describe themselves as existing in because of their rootlessness. And their experiences can lead them to develop more portable identities based on people instead of geography. And they can learn to blend the values from two worlds instead of choosing one with our support. So I want to make this concept more concrete for you all. Think about how you might answer the question, where are you from? Someone asks you, where are you from? How simple is your response going to be? Is it something that you find to be difficult to put into words? And then how strongly do you feel about your answer? Is it something that for you is a source of pride? Is it something that's a source of embarrassment? Are you neutral about it? And this simple exercise is meant to help you understand how even just this question about where you're from might impact a refugee or a newcomer youth who finds themselves existing in a third culture, which is just a combination of their home culture and their host culture, and how they might not know how to answer when they aren't sure if they're being sincere or authentic when they say they're from the passport country or their parents' country instead of the host country, right? So again, to make it a little more concrete, myself as a grown-up bicultural youth, I find it very strange to say that I'm an American because I believe it implies an upbringing that I did not experience. I was raised in Miami with one parent from South America and one parent from the Caribbean, and my values don't always align with the individualistic values of my American peers or the collectivistic ones of my family members, but they do align with the ones that I have decided mean the most to me and represent where I exist in that third space. So I've become a cultural bridge for all the parts of myself, and I can cross over to one side or another whenever I need to, as I understand that cultural blending is a celebration of the uniqueness of myself and all of the aspects that make me me. And my hope is that we can help children growing up in this third space to do the same. Now we're moving into harnessing some of those strengths that we can see in these kids for adaptability, right? And I talked a little bit before already about identity confusion, identity flexibility, and how the child might feel like they're fragmented. And this is, again, sort of coming from that deficit view. And what I would like to encourage is reframing that from a more strengths-based approach, right? And I talked about the digital tools, the educational material, and taking some practical tools from modalities that already exist exercises that already exist that you can incorporate into the work that you do. So continuing with that, I wanted to mention too some research that I was able to find as I was coming up with the talking points for this presentation led me to this pretty insightful article that I wanted to briefly discuss because I thought it was really relevant to what we're talking about today. So I'm sure everyone here has heard about the groundbreaking ACEs study that looked at the devastating effects of adverse childhood experiences and the long-term effects on adult physical and mental health outcomes. It was linking exposure to stress and adversity to poor health and development. Now, what the current research is attempting to answer is how do we combat this phenomenon that disproportionately impacts refugee and newcomer children who experience a significant amount of stress and adversity in their home country or home countries during their migration journey and as they're adapting to the new home potentially multiple times in their life. And the answer could come from protective and compensatory experiences, and they're called PACEs. And they can buffer the effects of ACEs by meeting some of the basic human needs and providing beneficial ways to engage and interact with the world. And these concepts consist of 5 types of supportive and nurturing relationships and 5 types of environmental resources. Now, the relationships are 1, feeling loved unconditionally by a caregiver. 2, having a trusted adult mentor outside of the immediate family. 3, having a best friend. 4, being part of a social group. And 5, volunteering in the community. In case you didn't realize it while I was sharing, you are that trusted adult mentor outside of the immediate family in your capacity as a provider working with the youth and their family. So we've got 1 PACE down, right? Now, the environmental resources are 1, having a regular routine and fair rules at home. 2, having basic needs met. 3, having access to appropriate educational resources. 4, engaging in regular physical activity. And 5, developing individual talents, interests, or hobbies. So I would say that if you go for a walk during your session, you allow the child to draw or listen to music during your time together, you provide psychoeducation, or you even just stretch together for 5 to 10 minutes before pickup time, then you are successfully engaging in both a relational and an environmental, protective, and compensatory experience that has been found to improve outcomes for children with adverse childhood experiences. Overwhelming yourself with all of those areas of need and how they should be met is only going to make you think that you're not doing enough. So focusing on what you can control in your role and then engaging a multidisciplinary team through referrals and warm introductions will keep you focused on how you can support the child to the best of your ability. Now, here we are. We've made it to the tail end of this presentation. I know that was a lot of information, so I want us to take a moment to reflect on what you're going to take away and apply to your work. Okay, so I want you to imagine that you are taking a journey and you're going to jot down 3 specific milestones on your journey based on today's learning objectives. So the first one is a safety check. I want you to identify 1 specific stressor that we reviewed today, like that belonging paradox or that chameleon fatigue, and what you're going to now look for more closely in your intake forms to make sure that you're assessing for them. The second one is going to be your navigation tool. I want you to choose 1 integration strategy that was discussed today, like that narrative mapping or even that Venn diagram of home, which was the one with the home culture, the host culture, and then the third space above, that you can explain to a child to help them visualize their identity more clearly. And then the third thing is going to be the fuel for your journey. I want you to identify 1 strength that these youth possess, like that high adaptability quotient or the cultural bridge building you'll use to help the youth reframe their identity confusion as resilience. What I want this to translate to is how can we help these youth see that their future is powerful, adaptable, hopeful, wise, flexible, resilient, integrated. They're pillars of their community. They're strong, they're connected. And take that with you today. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you for your engagement.
That was an excellent presentation, and I'm sure there was a lot of insight that we received from your presentation. So now I think this is a good time to spend a couple of minutes answering the questions that you all may have. We invite you to ask your questions in the chat. And just remember that even if we don't have the time to answer all of your questions right now, we will get back to you via email after the presentation. And so while you are typing your questions, we would like for you, please complete the event survey so that we can gather your feedback regarding the quality and usefulness of this event by scanning the QR code or clicking the link that we will be sharing in the chat. And just remember that the information that you provide will be used to enhance and improve our future events. I also want to take a moment to show you how to submit a consultation and technical assistance request with us. Simply go to RMTAC.org, click on the blue button on the top of the navigation bar that says Request Consultation or Technical Assistance, and complete the form. We are happy to answer your questions, support with treatment planning, what Esther mentioned, provide resources, and offer individualized coaching sessions for you and your team. And if your organization would like to reach out to us directly, please email us at RMTAC@RMTAC.org or visit our website at RMTAC.org. Our website offers additional educational resources, like Esther mentioned, including self-paced learning modules and recordings of our learning communities. And in addition, we also have an extensive resource directory. And the information used to develop this presentation came from a number of different resources and sources. So we have listed them here for reference for you. And I wanted to give you all just one final reminder to complete the event survey. It really helps us to maintain compliance with our grant by gathering your feedback about the quality and usefulness of the event. We are so grateful for you and taking the time to complete it. Thank you all again so much for your time, your attention, flexibility, and engagement during this presentation.